They said my brother's needs were greater than mine, so I lived in the garage for 6 years. When the storm hit and they had nowhere to go, I offered them what was once good enough for me. I moved into the garage the week I turned 13. No big talk. No family meeting. Just a folded blanket, a twin mattress against the far wall, and my name on a piece of tape stuck to a cardboard box. It's temporary, my mom said, not looking at me. Just until things settle with Michael. Things never settled with Michael. He had 2 rooms. One for sleeping, one for sensory regulation. That meant blackout curtains, noise machines, a mini fridge full of brand-name snacks, and a door I wasn't allowed to knock on. He's different, Dad would say. He needs more than you do. You're strong. You'll understand. I didn't answer. Because I already understood. They needed me not to need. The garage smelled like fertilizer and motor oil. There was no insulation, no heat, and the door rattled in the wind like it was holding in a scream. They gave me a space heater, the kind that clicks all night and shuts off without warning. I learned how to sleep in layers. How to tuck towels under the door when it rained. How to act like it was fine. It's just a phase, Mom said once. Some kids would kill for their own space. Sure. Some kids. Not hers. At school, I stopped inviting friends over. When they asked where my room was, I said I was renovating it. When they teased me about always wearing 2 hoodies, I laughed along. It was easier than explaining why I could see my breath indoors. Michael had meltdowns weekly. When he screamed, no one asked why. When he broke things, they said it wasn't his fault. When I asked for new shoes, mine had holes in the soles, my dad said. Let's focus on keeping the peace, okay? You're not the priority right now. That stuck with me longer than it should have. I kept my clothes in clear storage bins. No dresser. No closet. Just plastic lids and sticky labels. My bed was a mattress on a wood pallet. No frame. The first time I got sick, chills, fever, sore throat, I stayed out there alone. Mom came to the door once, dropped off soup in a mug. Didn't come in. We can't risk Michael catching it. Eventually, I stopped asking for anything. Stopped reminding them about parent-teacher nights. Stopped telling them when my grades improved. Stopped trying to matter. Because nothing I did made noise the way he did. One night, Michael had a meltdown so loud the neighbors called the cops. They showed up, saw the broken glass, the overturned bookshelf, the crying. My mom rushed out to explain. He's special. It's sensory overload. He didn't mean it. They nodded. Took notes. Left. Nobody asked where I was. I was in the garage. Watching shadows flicker on the garage door like ghosts in a silent film. 6 months after I turned 14, my aunt visited. She parked in the driveway, opened her trunk, and stared at the boxes stacked against the wall. Whose room is this? She asked. Mine. She looked at me like she hadn't heard right. Why aren't you inside? I shrugged. She didn't say anything else, just brought in groceries and left early. The next day, Mom was cold. Said I embarrassed her. You made her think we're monsters. I wanted to say she didn't need my help for that. But I didn't. Winters were the hardest. Some nights, I'd sit on the floor with socks over my hands, watching my breath curl like smoke in the dark. The heater gave out for good the 2nd January. Dad said it was old. Said they'd replace it. They didn't. I stole a space blanket from Michael's emergency kit. No one noticed. Or maybe they did. And decided not to say anything. At 15, I got a job shelving books at the library. 3 days a week after school, 4 hours a shift. I kept most of the money in a tin under my bed. Used the rest to buy gloves, batteries, and canned soup I could heat up in secret. When Mom saw the cans once, she laughed. What are you, a survivalist? I like being prepared. You're so dramatic sometimes. She said it like a compliment. Michael started online school. They turned his second room into a full studio setup, new desk, ergonomic chair, LED lighting. He got a laptop, noise-canceling headphones, even a gaming console to keep him calm. I asked to borrow it once. Mom said it wasn't mine to touch. You don't need distractions. You're not the one struggling. I didn't reply. Because by then I knew my silence wasn't weakness. It was a form of survival. On my 16th birthday, I stayed in the garage alone. No cake. No dinner. Michael had a headache. It's just bad timing, Dad said. Let's celebrate another night. We never did. At 17, I applied to community college. Didn't tell them. Paid the fee myself. Scheduled interviews myself. Chose night classes so I could keep working. When the acceptance came, I showed them at dinner. Mom looked surprised. Dad said, "That's wow. Impressive." Michael dropped his fork. Screamed something about the potatoes being too dry. Everyone turned to him. No one came back to me. By then, I'd saved enough for a deposit. Tiny apartment. Low ceiling. 2 windows. No garage smell. I packed in the middle of the night. Left a note on the garage door. Thanks for the space. That was all. I didn't take much. Just what I bought myself. The mattress. The plastic bins. A lamp. The tin box with my savings. And the part of me they never knew existed. The one that knew exactly what it felt like to sleep in the cold and still wake up stronger. I carried my first apartment key in my pocket for 2 weeks before I put a keychain on it. Not because I was forgetful, but because the sound of that single key clinking against my change reminded me, over and over, that no one could unlock that door but me. The place was small. Peeling paint. A fridge that wheezed. A leaky faucet that sang at night. But the first time I lay on the mattress, the same one I dragged from the garage, I slept straight through until noon. No banging. No screaming. No footsteps past the garage door. Just silence. I didn't tell my parents where I'd moved. I left a forwarding address with the school and updated it with work, but that was it. They didn't call. They didn't ask. I assumed they were busy, and honestly, I preferred it that way. Michael still lived at home. Now in his mid-20s, he'd cycled through 4 online programs and 3 therapists. Nothing stuck. Every year, they told people he was figuring things out. He had a new room now, my old one. The garage, last I heard, was used for storage. Funny how that worked. I started to build a life. Got a better job. Moved up from the library to a small accounting firm. Took night classes. Paid rent on time. Cooked my own food. Learned how to fix a toilet without calling anyone. No one clapped. No one noticed. But that was the point. I wasn't performing anymore. Sometimes coworkers would ask about my family. I kept it vague. Yeah, I've got a brother. No, we're not super close. It's complicated. Then I'd change the subject. I didn't lie, but I didn't hand them the whole story either. That story belonged to me. And I'd earned the right to tell it only when I wanted to. Years passed. 1, then 2. On my 21st birthday, I bought myself a second-hand couch. Soft. Deep gray. Big enough to fall asleep on after long shifts. I carried it up the stairs alone. When I sat down, I laughed not because anything was funny, but because no one had to approve the purchase. No one had to make space for it. No one had to say, but Michael needs this corner more. I didn't go home for holidays. Sometimes they called, sometimes they didn't. The voicemails were always similar. Hope you're doing well. Your brother asks about you. It would mean a lot if you came. They never asked how I was. Only why I stayed away. One year, around Christmas, I got a card in the mail. Handwritten. From my mother. I know things weren't always even. But life isn't about fairness. It's about love. You always had strength, that was your gift. I read it 3 times. Then folded it back into the envelope and put it in a drawer. She meant well. But what she didn't understand, or maybe never cared to, was that it had never been about strength. It had been about choice. And they never gave me one. At 23, I bought a small house. Not much, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a patch of grass out front, and a tree that leaned a little too far. But it was mine. No one else had a key. No one told me what I could or couldn't hang on the walls. No one rearranged my things for better flow. And that first night, I opened all the windows. Let the air in. Let everything else out. Sometimes I wondered if they thought I hated them. I didn't. I just stopped needing them the moment they taught me I wasn't supposed to ask for anything. That kind of lesson, once learned, doesn't unstick easily. Years blurred. Michael posted photos on social media. Trips paid for by my parents. Consoles. New gear. A home studio. Weekly self-care spa days. He called himself a neurodivergent advocate. The captions were poetic. Growing up different is hard. But my family never gave up on me. That line made me pause. Not out of jealousy. Out of recognition. They hadn't given up on him. They'd given up everything else for him. One night, I got a message from a cousin I barely knew. Just saw your brother's post. Is it true you grew up in the garage? I stared at the screen for a long time. Then typed. Yeah. But only for 6 years. No emoji. No explanation. Just the truth. Simple. Quiet. Heavy. I didn't hear back. Didn't need to. The truth once spoken didn't require an audience. Only space. And after all this time, I finally had plenty of that. The storm came fast. One of those once-in-a-decade events that news anchors warn you about with too much enthusiasm. The forecast changed from light flooding to mandatory evacuation overnight. By morning, roads were underwater, power lines snapped, and neighborhoods like my parents were swallowed whole. I didn't call them. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew they'd call me when they needed something. And they did. Right on cue. The voicemail came at 7:13 a.m. Hey, it's Mom. Things got bad. We're okay, but the house is gone. Completely gone. We're at a shelter, but it's temporary. Can we talk? No emotion in her voice. Just the kind of calm people use when they're trying not to sound like they're asking for help even when they are. 10 minutes later, a second message. This time from Dad. We wouldn't ask if we had another option. We're not looking for charity. Just a roof. Just for a little while. I stared at the screen. Not surprised. Not angry. Just still. Like my whole body was waiting to see which version of me would answer. The one who still wanted to be seen? Or the one who finally saw himself clearly enough not to fold? I didn't respond that morning. Instead, I walked through my house. My house. Quiet. Warm. Safe. The guest room was clean. Fresh sheets. A folded blanket at the edge of the bed. I kept it ready, more out of habit than hope. But I didn't open the door. I walked past it. Out to the garage. It wasn't fancy, but I kept it clean. Concrete floor, tools along the wall, a few boxes of winter stuff. I stood there for a while, breathing in that familiar smell of paint thinner, oil, and unfinished walls. I could almost hear the rattle of wind through the cracks. Feel the cold on my toes. Hear my own breath fogging the air. Except now. I could leave whenever I wanted. That changed everything. By late afternoon, another message came in. This time, my mom was crying. Michael's having a hard time. He doesn't understand why this happened. He's asking for his space, he can't deal with this shelter. Please. She didn't say we miss you or we're sorry. She said, he needs his space. And just like that, we were back where we started. I texted back one sentence. The garage is available. No emoji. No address. No explanation. Just 6 words. The same number of years I spent in one. She called immediately. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts. You can't be serious. After everything? He needs more than that. I sat at my table. Ate dinner. Washed the plate. Folded laundry. The phone buzzed again. Is there at least heat? I didn't answer. Because they already knew the answer. Just like I had all those nights when they told me it was good enough for now. By the next morning, they were at my door. I heard the knock. Didn't open it. A pause. Then another knock. Then the sound of a car door slamming. When I looked out the window, I saw their sedan in the driveway. Trunk open. Trash bags inside. A blanket. A pillow. Dad stood by the hood, arms crossed. Mom was pacing. Michael sat in the back seat, face buried in his phone. I stepped outside. Didn't say anything. Just walked past them, down the driveway to the side of the house. Unlocked the garage. Turned on the light. The bulb flickered. The concrete was cold. But the roof didn't leak. And the door shut. It's yours, I said. Then I walked back inside. They didn't follow me. Not right away. For a long time I stood in the kitchen, just listening. To silence. Then to movement. Boxes being shuffled. The low hum of voices. The garage door creaking shut. No knock on my front door. No request to please come talk. Just the sound of people settling for less, the way they once expected me to. That night, I sat by the window. Same spot where I used to dream of having a room with drywall. I watched the light under the garage door glow, then flicker out. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. Not explanation. Not comfort. Not warmth I was never given. The next morning, I made coffee. 1 mug. Just mine. And as I stirred in the cream, I thought, this is how dignity sounds. Not in shouting, but in silence they finally have to sit with. They didn't try the front door again. Not once. For 3 days, I heard movement in the garage, soft steps, shifting plastic, the occasional low voice. But they never knocked. Never asked to come inside. Never said a word. It was strange at first. Almost surreal. How quiet people get when the world stops accommodating them. On the 4th morning, I opened the blinds and saw my mother standing by the car. She was brushing her hair in the reflection of the passenger window. Not with a mirror. Not inside. Outside. In the cold. She wore the same sweatshirt from 2 days ago. Michael sat in the front seat, hoodie up, earbuds in. A familiar posture. Dad leaned against the garage wall, staring straight ahead like he was watching something that only existed in his own head. I made coffee. Didn't wave. That evening I took a walk. Not to check on them, just around the block. The air had the pre-winter bite. Damp leaves, chimney smoke, early dark. I passed my own house like I was a neighbor. Lights off in the garage. No sound. They were in there. I could feel it. I almost stopped. Almost. But I kept walking. Because I finally understood what they chose back then they were just now starting to taste. 2 more days passed. On the 6th, I found a note taped to the side gate, folded damp at the edges. It read, "We'll be gone by morning. Thank you for the roof. Mom." No signature. No apology. No acknowledgement of anything that came before. Just a transaction. Like I'd offered them a service. Like that erased the 6 years they left me in a room with no ceiling and no heat. The next day, they were gone. Garage empty. Trash bags gone. Air inside still cold, but clean. They left behind a folded blanket, a cracked flashlight, and a pair of slippers I didn't recognize. I didn't throw them out. I put them in a box. Labeled it miscellaneous. Pushed it to the back of a shelf. And closed the door. I didn't hear from them again. No text. No call. No, thank you. And strangely, I didn't want one. Because I knew now the silence was the closest thing to truth they'd ever given me. A week later, my neighbor asked if everything was okay. Said he'd seen the car. The late-night movements. The trash bags. Family in trouble? I just nodded. They needed a place. Hope it worked out. I smiled. It did. For me. I started sleeping better. Deeper. I stopped dreaming about the garage. Stopped waking up cold even when the heat was off. There was nothing left to prove. No weight left to carry. Just space. And a door that finally only opened from the inside. Some days I still think about what I would have said if they had asked. If my mother had looked me in the eye and said, "We were wrong." If my father had admitted, "You deserve better." If Michael had said anything at all. But they didn't. And I realized, I don't need the apology. Because I'm no longer living in the version of me that waited for one. I built something. Not big. Not loud. But mine. A kitchen that smells like coffee and cinnamon. A bed with clean sheets and no ceiling leaks. A back door that stays locked, not because I'm afraid they'll return, but because I decide who walks in now. People ask if I talk to my family. I say, no. But I remember them. That's enough. Memory doesn't require permission. It just asks you not to lie to yourself about what happened. And I don't. Not anymore. One night, I opened the garage again. Just stood there, leaning against the frame. It didn't smell like grief anymore. Just dust. And air. I left the light off. Closed the door. And went back inside. Where it was warm.